These are days of shaking, where pillars will fall to the ocean. We'll lie in the long grass of the garden and speak in
Emily, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me about magical thinking and sort of related themes today. Um,
Thank you. Yeah.
as a starter for 10, what do you think is magical thinking? How do you see it in your life?
Well, I think it's an interesting question because, you know, cue me desperately searching the internet for what actually magical thinking
Yeah.
is. I had this kind of diffuse idea about it being, a suspension of disbelief, or a kind of quite literally believing in magic and believing in there being more to life. So superstitious thinking. But I can see as well that there are kind of psychological ideas about it being about the power of thought as well, and the
Mm,
power of your own thoughts. So people having the belief that their thoughts and their habits and their rituals can affect life and the course of their life and their fate. So it could even be connected to things like OCD and the belief of, if I don't do this, something
mm.
might happen, negative or positive. So I think it's a complex old term, isn't it? Because it's related not only to superstitions and the belief in supernatural, but also, I think, yeah, there are different kind of incarnations to it.
Yeah, and I think we'll come back to the supernatural because I think that's a really interesting point. But that you said something there that I thought was really interesting, this sort of control in your life, this power over your thought. And that struck me as I've just noticed in the last sort of maybe 5 or 6 years that a lot of people are turning to narratives as a form of escapism, that they sort of say, oh well, I don't need to do this job, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and live off the land because that's the perfect happiness. That's me controlling my environment. And
Mm.
I wonder whether that's an element of these things that I've been hearing, that people are trying to control more
Mm.
their lives in maybe a more, like, certainly in the current age where things seem more chaotic, we've got a lot of conflicts around the world. People feel that they need to control that narrow band of their life, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it seems to be a few things. That there's a search for connection, ultimately a search for connection, and a belief that things are connected and that we have agency and power in our existence, and that they're, I guess, at a really fundamental level, that what we do has an effect.
Mm,
But also there are, yeah, you can see these people searching for something more, I think, in an increasingly um, unreligious world, um, and maybe in a more disconnected existence. We are just in the kind of, I think, still under the shadow of the pandemic, and there's
right.
been a lack of connection. So I wonder if this kind of rise in um, the search for something more. I mean, for me, I'm interested in, maybe it's slightly different to magical thinking, but certainly connected. I like the phrase, almost kind of looking for re-enchantment, this
I like
search
that.
for enchantment. And that, like, for me, kind of creatively, this idea has become really interesting, because I think a lot of people who aren't religious are realizing, actually, ritual, what does ritual mean to me? And actually, if I'm not doing it, and if I'm kind of stuck in unhealthy habits, how do you find rituals that are meaningful to me and that are magical to me, that bring me a sense of there being more than just the everyday, the search for the extra layer, the deep connections with life and with each other. So I guess, yeah, I was talking about this, funnily enough, with my friend the other day, and she said, and she gave me this, and I've got it here, this book
Ooh, ooh.
Enchantment by Catherine May. And I went, oh, people are writing about this. Can I read you a little bit
Yeah,
from it?
go
Because
for it, Emily.
for me,
Yes.
it just like, it kind of puts into words something that I've been thinking about for quite a while. And I think it might be connected. So this is Catherine May speaking. Post-pandemic kind of feeling of not being able to get herself out of the sludge.
Mm.
I have lost some fundamental part of my knowing, some elemental human feeling. Without it, the world feels like tap water left overnight, flat and chemical, devoid of life. I am like lightning seeking earth. Uneasy, I carry the prickle of potential energy in my limbs, ever deferred from the point of contact, the moment of release. Instead, it gathers in me, massing like a storm that never comes. I lack the language to even describe it, this vast, unsettled sense that I'm slipping over the glassy surface of things, afraid of what lurks beneath. I need a better way to walk through this life. I want to be enchanted again. Enchantment is small wonder magnified through meaning, fascination caught in the web of fable and memory. It relies on small doses of awe, almost homeopathic, those quiet traces of fascination that are only found when we look for them. It is the sense that we are joined together in one continuous thread of existence with the elements constituting this earth, and that there is a potency trapped in this interconnection, a tingle on the border of our perception. It is the forgotten seam of our geology, the elusive particle that binds our unstable matter, the ability to sense the magic in the everyday, to channel it through our minds and bodies, to be sustained by it.
I mean, well, she's put it very succinctly there. We may just stop now and
Yeah.
but that is so interesting. I mean, you really unpacked loads of ideas there. I was furiously scribbling down some of those things about this re-enchantment and this extra layer to life. And what you were saying with the pandemic, it's really interesting because has science removed awe and wonder from our lives? Because not everything is explainable, but everything that we generally come across is explainable. And there's a really interesting book called Religion and the Decline of Magic, written by a professor of history called Keith Thomas. I think it was back in the 70s, and it's a seminal text on sort of the history of magic or magical thinking. And what he essentially says, I'm sort of praising like a 700-page book here, but essentially science comes along, and where someone who's growing crops, it fails, and they suddenly think, oh, I've upset God, or I've done something bad, I've not paid my dues to the spirit or whatever. Science comes along and goes, well, actually, no, because clouds form in this way, and the reason it didn't rain this day was because the wind had changed and whatever. And do you think we're now in a process, we're now in an era where science explains everything from our health to our crop growing to our well-being to, physics explains our world. And through that, we have lost that sense of magic, that sense of awe. And so in today, people are moving back to that re-enchantment because they want to feel that essence. And maybe it's something that's a human thing, that we need to feel awe to find our place in the world or to get something
Yeah.
from the world.
I think that certainly a lot of scientists would say the opposite, that they, in their scientific research, find awe-inspiring discoveries on a daily basis, and that it can actually deepen a sense of awe and wonder at the world in understanding it from a different way. But I also think you're right, for a lot of people, there's this, what can come from this kind of very realism, this, how do I rephrase that, what can come from this kind of focus on the real, and a lack of magical, I think okay, let's rephrase this in the way that we need stories in our lives.
where pillars will fall to the ocean. We'll lie in the long grass of the garden and speak